An informational outline should be provided within 90 days, no later than October 24th, 2025. By that date, the government will have had more than 10 months to investigate and prepare its case, and surely will be able to share over 8 months since this crime happened, allegedly by Mangione. And again, they sought the death penalty lickety-split, very quickly. Quicker than most cases, and they sought the death penalty against him. Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup.
This is Ashley with Status Coup.
On the ground.
In Philadelphia.
Flint, Michigan. East Palestine, Ohio. Please support the leading independent news outlet on the ground,
covering what the corporate media covers up.
Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Luigi Mangione, the alleged shooter of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, is essentially daring the government put up or shut up in seeking the death penalty against him. In a court motion filed on Friday, his attorneys have asked a judge to issue the government 90 days to provide Luigi Mangione and his lawyers any facts, evidence that would warrant their death penalty sentencing that they have sought. To remind you, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that she was seeking the death penalty within months of taking office, far earlier than typically the Department of Justice would both evaluate and then announce whether they're seeking the death penalty after a crime. Usually it takes the DOJ over a year to review facts before announcing if they're going to pursue death penalty. They did it in just a matter of months, which is just one of many unusual, shall we say, things that have happened in this case. Let me read some of the motion to you again, filed by Mangione's attorneys in court on Friday. Defendant Luigi Mangione, through undersigned counsel and pursuant to the 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendment to the Constitution of the U.S. and the Federal Death Penalty Act, hereby moves the court to direct the government to provide him with an informational outline concerning the statutory and non-statutory aggravating factors that it intends to prove at a capital sentencing phase of his trial to support a death sentence. At such a sentencing phase, aggravating factors will play a role similar to offense elements at a guilt-innocence trial. But here, for most of the aggravators, including the critical ones involving the alleged creation of a grave risk of death to one or more persons other than the victim, the crime's effect on the deceased's family, friends, and coworkers, and the alleged future dangerousness of Mangione, the indictment and the government's death penalty notice contain only bare bones, vague allegations lacking any information about the facts upon which the government intends to rely. The paucity of detail prevents Mangione from preparing to defend against these aggravating factors at a sentencing phase. It also prevents the court from carrying out its critical pretrial duty to act as a gatekeeper against invalid factors and inadmissible evidence. As most other district courts, including several in this circuit, have recognized, an appropriate way to avoid these problems is for the government to provide an informational outline of the essential facts underlying its alleged aggravating factors. Such an outline functions much like a bill of particulars does for a guilt-innocence trial when the indictment is similarly conclusory. An informational outline should be provided within 90 days, no later than October 24th, 2025. By that date, the government will have had more than 10 months to investigate and prepare its case, and surely will be able to share with the court and the defense the essential facts underlying the aggravating factors. And it's already been, what are we in August, July? So we're talking over 8 months since this crime happened, allegedly by Mangione. And again, they sought the death penalty lickety-split, very quickly, quicker than most cases. And they sought the death penalty against him, where they have not against several, I would argue, more serious offenses, including mass shooters. So it kind of shows you, it seems that the victim and his class and how connected to the special interests and, you know, the corporate corruption that taints our government seems to be elevated in this case. Let me go on here because there's other important parts of this motion here. I'll put the motion in the description if you want to read it. Like every defendant, Mangione is entitled to meaningful notice of what the government intends to prove so that he can prepare and present a defense, including any legal or evidentiary challenges. Thus, in an ordinary criminal prosecution, a bill of particulars is required when the indictment charges are phrased in general terms so that they, quote, do not advise the defendant of the specific acts the government will seek to prove. On April 1st, 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi directed the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York to seek the death penalty against Mangione. A capital indictment was returned against Mangione on April 17, 2025. The government filed its notice of intent to seek the death penalty on April 24, 2025. The allegations in the notice of intent filed in this case are generalized and unbounded, leaving the defense blind as to what acts, events, harms, in short, what facts the government intends to prove. The most glaring example are the aggravators likely to spawn the most extensive litigation over their validity, scope, and admissibility, and to consume much of the government's sentencing presentation if permitted. The statutory aggravating factor of, quote, grave risk of death to additional persons, and the non-statutory factors of, quote, victim impact and, quote, future dangerousness. For the first of those factors, the grave risk of death to additional persons, the notice does not identify what other people were put in grave risk of death, nor does it provide any details as to what conduct by the defendant allegedly placed such individuals at a grave risk of death. The notice is equally silent with respect to the facts the government intends to prove regarding the impact that Mr. Thompson's death had on his family, friends, and coworkers. I want to get to the grave risk of death. Well, since the New York officials, the district attorney, were leaking like a sieve to the press, they leaked Mangione's alleged notes and his notebook and his alleged manifesto. Well, in his alleged notes were the were the quotes from Mangione on his rationing before he allegedly did this. What do? You whack the CEO at the annual parasitic bean counter convention. It's targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence, was one passage written in the notebook, the official said. They leaked that. The district attorney leaked that to the press, among many other things they leaked to the press, who were very happy to just regurgitate it. Well, if he allegedly wrote in his notes, I did this in a targeted way, whether you agree with what he did or not, I'm just talking the bare bone facts. If he, before he allegedly did this, wrote, I wanted to limit it to innocence, I wanted to do it in a targeted way, where is the grave risk of death to others? In his own alleged words, he was taking measures not to risk others and to do it in a targeted way that would only harm this one individual. So the government's own leaking kind of counteracts its core arguments in seeking the death penalty. I'll also show you, this is from an interview I did outside the courthouse in December. So this was his first court appearance in the New York case, interviewing supporters, for healthcare reform, people who were out there supporting his right to a fair trial. I simply asked a New Yorker, were people terrorized by what Mangione allegedly did? I thought her answer was pretty illuminating. What are your thoughts beyond the healthcare? I mean, geez, Dylan Roof, who went and killed 9 African Americans at that church in South Carolina. He wasn't even charged as a terrorist. January 6th folks who stormed the Capitol, they were not charged as terrorists. Whether you, condone or don't condone what Luigi Mangione allegedly did, they're charging him as a terrorist. The feds are charging him. It seems like the victim here seems to be this victim is put on a higher pedestal.
Yeah, I think that was surprising to me, and I think to a lot of people. I don't know anyone. I was working in Midtown when this happened, and no one was really super concerned that he got away and he was on the loose for a while. I don't know anyone who was concerned in New York City, to be perfectly honest. So I don't know really what that's.
You and others weren't, quote, terrorized.
Right, exactly. So that's an interesting charge, and I'm curious to hear what supports it.
I was not the only person Who said that to me? It seemed like the only people terrorized were the Fortune 500 companies and the mega companies, from healthcare to Wall Street to big pharma, who were frantically calling the governor of New York and wanting their own special hotline for that they could, report perceived terrorist threats to them. The actual people did not seem terrorized. Again, it's not about whether you agree or disagree with what Mangione allegedly did. A lot of people don't support murder, regardless if they believe the victim was a morally, reprehensible person and was killing people through the predatory for-profit health insurance industry. But grave risk to others, terrorism, there doesn't seem to be a there there. There does not seem to be a there there. Let me read further in the actual court motion about that part of what the government states in seeking the death penalty, the grave risk of death to additional persons. The government's death penalty notice alleges that in the commissions of the offense, Mangione, quote, knowingly created a grave risk of death to one or more persons in addition to the victim of the offense. This simply repeats the language of the aggravating factor listed in the FDPA. It provides no notice of which, quote, persons are covered, nor does the aggravating factor, as alleged, identify which acts or acts by Mangione knowingly created a grave risk to such individuals. Indeed, given that the shooting of Thompson was done at close range and early in the morning when the street was nearly empty, it's hard to imagine without further specificity how the government intends to prove this aggravating factor. Accordingly, the court should follow the lead of other district courts and order the government's informational outline to include more specific notice for this aggravating factor. Then they move on to future dangerousness. The final non-statutory aggravator crafted by the government for its death penalty notice is, quote, future dangerousness. The notice is vague and unspecified about this, saying only that Luigi Mangione presents a future danger because he, quote, expressed intent to target entire industry and rally political and social opposition to that industry by engaging in an act of lethal violence, and he took steps to evade law enforcement, flee New York City immediately after the murder, and cross state lines while armed with a privately manufactured firearm and silencer. The notice doesn't explain in what way Mangione intended to, quote, target an entire industry. Does the government intend to prove that he intended to kill others in the healthcare industry, or does it contend, as suggested by the phrase, quote, and rally political and social opposition to that industry, that he was hoping to spark a political and social movement to change the healthcare industry? If the government intends to prove that Mangione intended to kill others in the healthcare industry, who were the intended victims and what proof is there of such intent? If Mangione only intended to rally political and social opposition to the healthcare industry, in what way does that make him a future danger to anyone? It makes him a future danger to their never-ending immoral profit spigot, their ability to deny people who have already paid for their health insurance through their absurd deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance, yada, 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 hidden medical bills. But, committing a crime in order to inspire social or political action, nonviolent social and political action, is not terrorism. You don't have to go to law school for that. And from like I already said, from what the government has already leaked to the press, it seems through his alleged words, he did this in a targeted, specific way as to avoid killing more than one person, as to avoid killing innocents. And I don't know. I don't see any, PowerPoint presentation or business plan here for him to do rallies in jail, to rally the troops, or to rally social and political change, which again wouldn't be a terrorist act. It seems like he had grievances, which we've reported about before, and wanted to make a statement, but doesn't seem like, unless they have evidence they haven't provided, which I'm sure they would have, it doesn't seem like they have evidence that he had intent or a plan to kill others in the health insurance industry, in other similar industries, or, was trying to kind of inspire other people to take violent action. Just seems like essentially the government wants to give preferential treatment to big pharma, to the for-profit private health insurance industry that has bought our government and government officials, and that they want to make a huge example of Mangione to deter anyone from taking violent action or even aggressive, nonviolent action against the very industries that are killing, either quickly or slowly, hundreds of thousands of people a year. That's how many people die as a result of our predatory for-profit health insurance industry and our politicians that allow it to happen through their legal bribes. So we will see. It seems to me that it's reasonable to ask the government, who expedited the request of the death penalty, to provide some facts and evidence for their seeking of the death penalty. And by asking in 90 days, that gives the government 10 months. So, Attorney General Pam Bondi, the New York State Attorney, the New York State District Attorney, but specifically Bondi, they might have to take a break from covering up Donald Trump's role in the Epstein scandal to actually provide evidence for seeking the death penalty and their terrorism charges against Mangione. We will stay on this story. As far as I know, we're one of the only outlets still covering this. So thank you for those who are supporting us. And please, if you can, support us as a paid member. We plan on covering the trial when it starts next year. You can support us for as low as $5 a month. That's 16 cents a day. Makes a big difference and helps us fund our on-the-ground reporting.